At her birthday party, Paula clinked glasses with everyone in the room, everyone except me. I stood there with a gift in my hands, the same one she once said she'd always dreamed of. I had spent weeks preparing for this day, memorizing her. Favorite color, wrapping it myself, even skipping work meetings just to make sure I could be there early. But as I walked in, she didn't even glance in my direction. Ryan, her old college buddy, was the first one she hugged. She laughed so loudly with him, her hand lingering on his arm like I was never there in the first place. People greeted me out of politeness, but Paula didn't say a single word. Not even a hi. She walked past me 3 times, once to fix her makeup, once to take photos, and once, ironically, to get champagne for Ryan. I thought maybe she hadn't noticed me, but then I saw her glance my way, hesitate for a second, and then turn away like she couldn't be bothered. I wasn't invisible. She just wanted me to be. I stood in the corner while she cut the cake. Ryan was right beside her, joking about how he should have been the one to make the wish. She giggled and said, "Maybe next year." The people around them laughed, and then I realized this wasn't a careless mistake. This was a message. A loud, public one. So I smiled. I pulled out my phone, stepped onto the small stage beside the DJ booth, and tapped the mic twice. Everyone looked up. The music stopped. Paula froze mid-laugh, eyes widening when she saw me standing under the spotlight. "Sorry to interrupt," I said. "But I just wanted to share some good news, too." I looked straight at her and smiled. I just got engaged. Gasps filled the room. Paula blinked, confused. "To Wendy," I continued, shifting my gaze to her best friend across the room. Wendy stood frozen for a second. Then she looked at me and nodded. The whole room was silent. Paula's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. I didn't flinch. I had clinked too many empty glasses with her in the past. Tonight, I finally raised one for myself. My name is Mitchell. I'm 28, work in interior design, and for the past 3 years, I've been in a relationship with Paula. Smart, vibrant, the kind of woman who walks into a room and makes people turn around twice. When we first met, it wasn't fireworks. It was something quieter, something steadier. She had just moved to the city, chasing her career in event management. I had helped redesign the lobby of the firm she interned at. She complimented the chandelier and told me it looked like dripping stars. I still remember how her eyes lit up when she said it. For the longest time, I thought we were the real thing. We had our quirks. She hated messes. I was always late to dinners. She loved jazz. I leaned towards silence. But we found middle ground, or at least I thought we did. In the beginning, she made time. She asked about my projects, sent me photos of random furniture she found beautiful. She made playlists for our late-night drives and left notes in my coat pocket before work. I thought that meant something. But slowly, the notes stopped. The playlists were replaced with messages left unread. I noticed she had more and more late nights. "Client meetings," she said. "Team planning sessions." At first, I believed her. I wanted to believe her, and then Ryan reappeared, an old friend from her college years. He had just moved into the city for a new job, and apparently he didn't know many people around here. Paula said he was going through a rough time, and she just wanted to be there for him. "I've known him for years," she told me. "He's like family." She said it with the same confidence one uses when stating a fact, not expecting any resistance. So I stayed silent. The first time she canceled a dinner plan with me to have coffee with Ryan, I brushed it off. The third time, she left me waiting. In a restaurant with a reservation under my name, I began to notice. "I'm not replacing you," she said once when I finally asked. "He just needs support." Funny how that support came in the form of movie nights, grocery runs, and surprise birthday plans. For him. It wasn't just about time. It was about energy. She gave him her laughter, her warmth, her spontaneity, and I got silence. Carefully, measured conversations, apologies that felt too scripted to be sincere. But the final straw wasn't any one big moment. It was the accumulation. It was watching her go quiet whenever I walked into the room and she was on the phone. It was the way she never posted photos of us anymore but was tagged in Ryan's stories more times than I could count. I started keeping score. Not out of pettiness, but because I needed to remind myself that I wasn't imagining things. In the past year, she had forgotten our anniversary, my birthday, and even a job milestone I had invited her to celebrate. But she remembered Ryan's dog's vet appointment. Still, I stayed, because I kept thinking maybe it would get better. Maybe she just needed time. Maybe Ryan would get back on his feet and stop leaning on her. Maybe she'd remember what we had, but people don't forget what they value. I remember once, during a lazy Sunday, she had fallen asleep with her head on my chest. I ran my fingers through her hair and asked, "Do you think we'll still be like this in 10 years? She didn't open her eyes. She just smiled and said, "As long as you don't get bored of me first." I should have known then. Now we barely shared space. The apartment was filled with silence. Conversations became practical. "Did you take out the trash? Can you pick up eggs on the way back? Ryan's coming over for a bit. I'll keep it short." I didn't know how to respond anymore, so I stopped trying. But I noticed everything. How she'd change outfits 3 times before meeting him, but wore the same hoodie on our dates. How she'd tell me she was too tired to talk, only to spend the next hour on video chat with him in the living room. I wondered if it was me, if I had grown dull, if Ryan had something I lacked. But no, he was just new, exciting, and most importantly, he wasn't me. And maybe that was the part that stung the most, because I had given Paula everything I had, my time, my loyalty, my patience, and all I got in return was the privilege of being quietly replaced. At her party, I watched her float from guest to guest, radiant and laughing, like we weren't even dating. Like I was just another person who happened to show up. She smiled at Ryan the way she used to smile at me. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not anger, just clarity. If I didn't matter in her world, I'd stop trying to belong there. That night, everything changed. The week before Paula's birthday, I had asked her what kind of celebration she wanted. She was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone while her legs rested across my lap. "Nothing big," she said casually. "Just a small gathering. You don't need to stress." So I didn't stress. But I still made a plan. I spoke to her best friend Wendy, who helped me pick out a gift Paula once mentioned when we passed a store window months ago. A necklace. Delicate, with a little charm that matched the earrings she wore every time she felt confident. "I want to wear something like this when I feel unstoppable," she had said that day, smiling at her reflection. Remembered. And maybe deep down, I thought if I gave her something that reminded her of that version of herself, she'd remember us too. The version of us that laughed in bed over burnt toast and watched documentaries on mute just to make up stories for the people on screen. But when her birthday came, everything was different. She told me the party was at Ryan's apartment because his place has more space and he offered to help. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and asked what time she wanted me to show up. "Maybe around 7, she said. "Everyone should be there by then." I arrived at 6:30. With the necklace carefully packed and a small bouquet in hand, Paula didn't greet me. She was in the kitchen with Ryan, arranging drinks and laughing about something I couldn't hear. I waited for her to glance up, to wave, to smile, anything. She didn't. Guests started to arrive. One by one, they said hi to me, some giving me that awkward look, the one people give when they know something's wrong but pretend not to see it. Wendy noticed too. She came over and asked gently, "Are you okay?" I smiled back. Why wouldn't I be? At 7:30, Paula took the center of the room to blow out candles. Ryan stood beside her, arms slung over her shoulder like it had always belonged. There. Someone joked, "You two look like a couple," and the room burst into laughter. Paula didn't deny it. She just laughed too. I didn't even hear my own heartbeat after that. I sat on the edge of the sofa, the necklace box pressed into my palm so tightly I thought it might snap open. I waited for her to come to me, to say something, anything. She never did. I stood up and went outside for some air. Wendy followed me a few minutes later. "She's been weird lately," she said softly. I nodded. "I know." "She says everything's fine, but I can tell something's off." I didn't respond. I was too busy wondering how the woman I loved had slipped so far away from me without a single fight, without a goodbye, without even noticing what she was doing. When we went back in, Paula was pouring drinks for Ryan and taking selfies with him. Someone shouted, "One with the birthday girl and her favorite guy." They posed, and just before the camera clicked, she rested her head on his shoulder. That's when it happened. Something in me broke, not in anger, not in jealousy, in quiet disbelief. I had shown up for her. Again. I had bought the gift she wanted, arranged my work around her party, stood through her laughter that wasn't mine. And yet, in this room full of people, she had made it clear. My presence didn't matter. She didn't see me, or maybe she did. And just didn't care. Later that night, when most people were dancing or eating, I tried to speak to her. "Can we talk?" I asked quietly. She looked at me like I'd interrupted something sacred. "Now?" I nodded. "I'm kind of busy," she said, glancing toward Ryan, who was laughing at something across the room. "Can it wait?" "Sure." It could wait, but I wouldn't. I looked at Wendy, standing near the drinks, watching the whole thing unfold. She had always been kind to me, the kind of friend who didn't ask too many questions but saw too much. Our eyes met, and I smiled. She smiled back, hesitant but warm. That's when I made the decision. If Paula could act like I was a stranger, I would stop playing the role of her loyal shadow. If she wanted to make me invisible, I'd remind her I still existed, in a way she'd never forget. I couldn't sleep that night, not because of anger, not even heartbreak, because of the silence. Paula came home late, probably after helping Ryan clean up. I was in bed by then, eyes closed, breathing steady, pretending to be asleep. She paused at the doorway for a moment, then quietly tiptoed past me, as if afraid to wake a stranger. That's exactly what I felt like now, a stranger in my own relationship. In the darkness, I stared at the ceiling, counting every second she didn't turn to me. Every inch between us in that bed felt like a canyon. I used to reach out for her in my sleep. Now I didn't even move. The next morning, she was already dressed when I walked into the kitchen. She poured coffee like everything was normal. "Going to Ryan's," she said casually. "He needs help finalizing the event plan for his office." I didn't say anything. Just took a bite of toast and kept chewing. She glanced at me, lips parting slightly. Maybe she wanted me to stop her. Maybe she expected an argument, a fight, a reaction. But I gave her none. She left 10 minutes later. The door closed softly behind her, like she was used to walking out on me. I stared at the chair where she used to sit, eating cereal and stealing bites from my plate when she thought I wasn't looking. There was a time she'd call me during lunch breaks just to hear my voice. Now I wasn't even worth a text. I started thinking about all the little things that had shifted without me noticing, the gradual fade of affection, the days she stopped asking if I needed anything from the store, the times I'd come home from work and she wouldn't even look up from her phone. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was this hollow ache. Like I'd already lost her, and I was just trying to figure out when it had actually happened. Maybe it was the day she forgot our second anniversary and swore it was just a busy week. Maybe it was when she stopped inviting me to her work events, saying I wouldn't enjoy them anyway. Or maybe it was last night when she laughed a little too comfortably in someone else's arms. The worst part was, she didn't even realize what she'd done. She thought I'd always be there. That no matter how much she distanced herself, I'd stay. That my silence was proof of patience, not pain, but I was tired. Tired of being the second option. Tired of explaining to myself why she kept choosing someone else over me. Tired of holding on to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. At work, I couldn't focus. Designs blurred into shapes I didn't care about. My boss asked if something was wrong. I said I was just tired. That wasn't a lie. I hadn't felt rested in months. Wendy texted me that afternoon. You okay? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Yeah, just thinking. You didn't deserve what happened last night. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I knew. That I kept waiting for Paula to turn around and see me standing there. That I had spent months making excuses for her, hoping that if I loved her hard enough, she'd come back. That maybe the worst kind of heartbreak isn't when someone leaves you. It's when they stay but act like you're not there. By evening, Paula still hadn't called. I imagined her laughing again with Ryan, maybe watching a movie together, maybe sharing jokes I hadn't heard in months. I had once been her person. Now, I wasn't even part of her world. The suspense of waiting, wondering if she'd come home with guilt or just more excuses, was worse than any fight we could have had. But even as I sat on the couch holding the necklace I never gave her, a strange calmness settled over me. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete with someone who didn't even know they were winning. If she had already chosen Ryan, if not in words, then in action, then I would choose myself. That was the only way to stop drowning in this silence. That was the only way to finally breathe again. 2 days later, Paula came home earlier than usual. It was unexpected. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by fabric swatches trying to finalize a client's palette when I heard the door click open at 7, not her usual 10. She walked in, holding a brown paper bag from her favorite Thai place. She set it on the table like it meant something. I thought we could eat together tonight, she said. I looked up. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't cold either. Her expression was cautious, like she was testing the waters of something she hadn't stepped into in a long time. I nodded. We sat down at the table. She placed the food out carefully, separating mine from hers like she remembered what I liked. She even handed me an extra packet of hot sauce. You always forget this, I said quietly. She looked surprised. I thought you didn't use it anymore. No. You just stopped bringing it. Her hand paused mid-reach. She let out a small breath but didn't say anything. We ate in silence for a while. Then she spoke. Ryan's taking a job offer overseas. I didn't react. She went on. He'll be leaving in a few weeks. Probably won't be around much before that. He's got family to visit, things to pack, that kind of stuff. I nodded slowly. Good for him. Paula stared at me. That's it? What else is there? She leaned forward a little. You're not even going to ask if I'll miss him. I set my chopsticks down. Do you want me to? She bit her lip. Mitchell, I just thought you'd care more. I tilted my head, studying her. Why? Because you expected me to yell? Fight? Break down so you could feel needed again? She looked like I had slapped her. I stood up and began clearing the table. You only notice me when I stop reacting. When I start choosing silence over confrontation, suddenly I'm the villain. She followed me into the kitchen. That's not true. I turned to face her. Isn't it? You ignored me at your party. You spent nights with him, canceled plans, acted like I was too much, too needy, too sensitive. And now because he's leaving, I'm supposed to matter again? She was quiet. Then she said the last thing I expected. Wendy told me she likes you. The plate I was holding froze in my hand. I didn't believe it at first, Paula continued, voice low. But then I started paying attention. The way she looks at you, how she talks to you. I asked her, and she didn't deny it. I turned slowly. Why are you telling me this? Because I realized I might lose you. I stared at her for a moment, not with anger, but with something heavier. You already did, I said softly. Paula looked stunned, and in that moment I understood the twist wasn't just Ryan leaving, it wasn't Wendy having feelings for me. It was Paula finally realizing she had built her life around someone who always had one foot out the door, while the one who stayed was the one she forgot to see. But the problem was, some realizations come too late. The next weekend, Wendy invited me to a small dinner with a few mutual friends. Paula wasn't going. She had mentioned something about being tired, wanting to rest, and told me to go if I felt like it. I went. Not because of Wendy, not even because of the invitation, just because I needed space to breathe without constantly feeling like I was being measured against someone else's expectations. Wendy didn't make things awkward. She didn't hover or flirt. She sat beside me, spoke when spoken to, and quietly passed me the water when I forgot to reach for it. It was comforting. When the dinner ended, we both stepped outside at the same time. The sky was low and cloudy, the air cool enough to pull a jacket tighter around your chest. She looked at me carefully and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. "You sure?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "No." She didn't ask more questions, just walked beside me in silence. At the end of the block, I stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did Paula ever mention to you when she stopped being in love with me?" Wendy took a deep breath. She didn't say it outright, but there were moments, small things. She'd talk about you like you were part of her routine, not her life. It was like you had become familiar furniture, comfortable, useful, but not exciting. I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." "Mitchell." She paused. "You know I'd never say anything to hurt her. She's my friend. But I saw how she treated you. I saw how you kept showing up and she kept walking past like you weren't standing there." She looked at me like she wanted to say more but didn't. And that's when I realized maybe the loudest heartbreaks aren't the ones where people leave. It's the ones where they stay, but act like they already did. The next day, Paula asked if we could talk. We sat on the living room couch, the silence between us broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. She seemed nervous, hands twisting in her lap. "I've been thinking," she started, "about everything. Us, Ryan, the party, and I know I've been distant." I didn't say anything. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really am. I didn't realize how far I'd gone until I saw the way you looked at me that night, like you didn't recognize me." "You were right," I said. "I didn't." She flinched. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, "but you did." "I know, I thought you'd always be there. You were safe, you were steady, and I guess I stopped trying because I thought I didn't have to." I looked at her then, really looked, and I saw it. Not just guilt, not just regret, but fear. Fear that I had finally let go. "You used to be the person I ran to," I said. "Now you're the reason I want to leave the room." She blinked quickly, trying to keep her tears from falling. "I want to fix this," she said. "Please. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything." And that's when I stood up and walked to the table. I opened the drawer and pulled out the necklace I never gave her. I placed it on the table between us. "You remember this?" Her eyes widened. You bought it?" "I did. A month before your birthday." She opened the box slowly, her fingers trembling. When she saw it, she let out a quiet gasp. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I remembered," I said, voice soft. "But you forgot." She closed the box and looked up at me. "Why didn't you give it to me?" "Because that night, you were already wearing someone else's attention." She shook her head. "Mitchell, No," I said firmly. "Let me finish." I sat down across from her. "For months I waited for you to come back to me. I made excuses for the way you pulled away. I told myself Ryan was just a phase, that you were stressed, that I wasn't being fair. But the truth is, I was just afraid to admit the love we had wasn't there anymore. At least not from you." She wiped her face, but said nothing. "I don't hate you," I said. "I want you to know that. You were important to me. You still are. But I can't be with someone who needs to lose me, to see me." She opened her mouth, but the words never came. And then my phone buzzed. A message from Wendy. "I hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." I looked up and met Paula's eyes. "There's something else." What? I told. Everyone at your party that I got engaged. Her face went pale. I did it because I needed to break the pattern, to stop being the one you always looked through. You said it to hurt me? No, I said. I said it because I wanted to remind myself that I could still be seen. And Wendy? I nodded. She said yes. Paula covered her mouth, eyes wide. Wendy's not a replacement, I added. She didn't push herself into this. She didn't ask for any of it. But she was there when you weren't. The room went completely still. Just the sound of Paula's breath shaking, trying to hold everything in. So that's it? She asked. We're just done? I looked down at the necklace. You stopped being mine long before I stopped trying, I said. But I think deep down, you always knew I wouldn't wait forever. She lowered her head, tears finally falling. I hope you find someone who makes you feel like you belong again, I said gently. Like you matter. Because I did, and I would have stayed forever, if you had just looked up. Then I stood up, walked to the door, and left. That was the moment everything broke. Not with a scream, but with silence. 3 weeks later, I sat in the cafe where Wendy and I first bumped into each other outside of Paula's circle. It had been raining that day, and she had offered to share her umbrella while we waited for a cab. She didn't say much, just smiled and held it over both of us like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's how she was. Simple gestures, quiet presence. Today, the sun poured through the windows, casting golden shadows across the floor. The light felt different, warmer, honest. Wendy sat across from me, stirring her tea with the same grace she always had. Are you sure about this? She asked, looking up. I've never been more sure, I replied. She smiled, but there was hesitation in her eyes. I don't want to be the reason Paula loses something. You're not the reason, I said. She lost me on her own. You're just the one who reminded me what it felt like to be seen again. Her eyes softened. Still, I never thought it would turn out like this. Neither did I said. But sometimes, the cleanest break comes when people show you who they truly are. She nodded slowly, then pulled out a small velvet box from her bag. You left this with me. Thought you might want it back. I took it, opened the lid, and stared at the ring. Simple. Elegant. Something I had picked out a long time ago, thinking I'd propose on Paula's next birthday. Funny how things change. I snapped the box shut and slipped it into my pocket. Later that evening, Wendy and I walked into the event Paula had organized, a charity gala for her company. She was always proud of her work, and she looked stunning in her navy gown, moving through the crowd like she owned every inch of the space. The moment she saw us, her expression faltered. Just for a second, but it was enough. I walked up to her, calmly, Wendy beside me. Mitchell, she said, her voice tighter than usual. I didn't expect to see you here. I wasn't planning to come, but then I remembered I promised to support causes that matter. She blinked, unsure if I was mocking her or not. Wendy smiled politely. Lovely setup, Paula. You really outdid yourself. Paula nodded, her gaze flickering between us. You two seem close. I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at her and said, It's nice, isn't it? To be with someone who doesn't make you feel like a ghost. Her jaw tightened. So this is about revenge. No, I said calmly. This is about closure. The lights dimmed then, signaling the start of the main ceremony. We took our seats, Paula a few tables away. From the corner of my eye, I saw her looking back more than once. At the end of the night, Wendy and I stepped outside. The air was crisp. The sky clear. Everything about the moment felt light. Just as we were about to leave, I heard footsteps behind us. Mitchell. I turned. Paula stood there, arms crossed, eyes full of emotions I couldn't name anymore. I just want to ask one thing, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Was there ever a version of this where you would have stayed? I looked at her for a long time. There was, I said, but that version of you would have chosen me before you had to lose me. She closed her eyes. I loved you, she said. I know, I replied, but you didn't protect that love. You left it lying in the open for someone else to feel. More valued than I ever did. I made mistakes, and I paid the price for them every day I waited for you to come back. She looked at Wendy, then back at me. So what happens now? I stepped closer, my tone still gentle. Now? You keep walking forward, just not toward me. I thought we were forever, she whispered. I nodded slowly. You thought I'd stay no matter how you treated me. That was your mistake. Mine was believing you'd never forget what we had. She looked like she was about to say something else, but then she stopped. Her eyes glistened and she took a step back. I turned to Wendy and extended my hand. She took it without hesitation, as mas. We walked away, Paula called out one last time. Mitchell! I stopped but didn't turn around. I hope she never makes you feel like I did. I looked over my shoulder and said, she already doesn't. Then I kept walking. No guilt. No pain. Just the finality of a door I had left open for far too long, finally closing behind me. When we reached the car, Wendy looked at me quietly. Are you okay? I nodded. Yeah. For the first time in years, I am. I leaned against the door and took a deep breath. She used to make me feel small, I said, like I had to earn her time, her affection, her presence. Wendy looked at me. And now? Now I know I never had to beg for something that should have been freely given. She smiled, rested her head against my shoulder. The revenge hadn't come in the form of anger or cruelty. It had come in the form of grace, of letting go, of showing her that the man she thought would always wait had already found someone who didn't need reminding of his worth. And as we drove away, I didn't look back. Some endings aren't meant to be mourned. They're meant to be walked away from, with your head high and your heart finally light.